Listen to that, Robert Eade, who's head of the Policy Exchange's Health and Social Care Unit. Is it fair for my listeners to think it was only a few months ago that the NI went up to provide £12 billion to tackle this backlog, and now we're looking at the worst set of figures on record? They might be surprised. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. I think the public is right to be angry at the deterioration in performance because it is across the board. You spent most of the feature with Richard talking about A&E, but in reality, every single light on the dashboard is flashing. We've got big growth in the waiting list for planned care. We've got more than 10,000 people waiting more than 104 days for cancer treatment, and we know the importance of treating cancer early. And there's lots of hidden waiting lists too, so things like mental health, eating disorder services. 1 million people are waiting for community care. So this is a pretty gloomy picture across the board. I think on funding, I would make the point that we need to give a bit of time for some of that extra funding to hit the front line. It's not always immediate, and part of that is due to how Whitehall works and the fact that the NHS is such a large organisation, but there needs to be a degree of patience to let some of the more transformational elements of that funding start to reap dividends. But in August, this is exceptionally bad.
Will it be in place by the winter, do you imagine, Mr. Eade?
Well, I think Richard was right to identify that there's some things that you can do this winter, and we need to, I think fundamentally the Health Secretary and the leadership within the NHS need to be dividing this into two. They need to be saying, firstly, what are the key causes, and then what are the things that we can do right now that will make a difference for this winter, and then what are the things that we can do in the longer term that will put the NHS on a more sustainable footing. The main reason, actually, that we've got this issue in accident and emergency is not because of higher demand. If you look at the figures, actually, attendances are 5% lower than they were in the equivalent month before the pandemic. Less people are turning up. The main issue is around hospital flow, and that's a sort of terrible piece of NHS jargon, but it effectively means, Nick, how quickly do you move through the hospital? And there's big issues with the other end of the pipeline. So we need to find a way of discharging people efficiently into the community. There's some things that you can do immediately on that, things like improving the workforce in social care, giving them better pay so that they're less likely to leave to take jobs in hospitality. Some of that you can do right now, and that should help to answer your question this winter.
Lastly, and you're right to point I think you said all the dashboard lights are flashing red or whatever. You're right. 6.7 million people in England are waiting for routine hospital treatment. That's 1 in 8. 1 in 8 in England. The number who've had to wait more than 12 hours in A&E has jumped by a third in 1 month to almost 30,000, and ambulance response times to emergency calls such as strokes or epilepsy have now moved to nearly triple the target of 18 minutes. So with those three sets of statistics, can I ask you, is the NHS broken?
It's very close. We've got very used to the word crisis, but this is exceptionally bad as it's ever been. And it's got to be top of the in tray for the new Prime Minister.
Grateful for your time. Robert Eade, you're head of Policy Exchange's Health and Social Care Unit.